My man's got a heart like a rocket in the sea.
Known in her lifetime as the Empress of Blues, Bessie Smith was one of the most famous musicians of her generation and has deeply influenced countless musicians, from Billie Holiday to Janis Joplin to the new wave of contemporary blues musicians. In her imaginative biography, former national poet of Scotland, Jackie Kay, combines verse, memoir, and fictionalized moments to capture Bessie's raw, unmatched talent and extraordinary, often heartbreaking story. Jackie Kay is joined in conversation by Dr. Gerald Early, renowned literary scholar and the Merle King Professor of Modern Letters in the African and African American Studies Department at Washington University.
I'm Gerald Early, Professor of African and African American Studies at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm in conversation today with Jackie Kay, who is the author of the book Bessie Smith, a Poet's Biography of a Blues Legend. For people in our audience, young people particularly, could you just say a word or two about who was Bessie Smith?
Well, Bessie Smith was probably one of the greatest blues singers that ever lived. She was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She grew up in a little ramshackle cabin. Her parents died by the time that she was 9, so she was really brought up by her sisters. And she said in this ramshackle cabin, the rats outnumbered the children. She then joined a Mosey Stokes traveling crew when she was 19. And when she was 29, she released her very first record, Downhearted Blues, which sold 780,000 copies. So she suddenly went from poor to being the richest Black woman in America. Mm-hmm. And then she went back to being poor again. The blues suffered with the Wall Street crash and with blues kind of morphing into jazz. And she died actually poor again in 1937 in a very controversial car accident. Her song, Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out, is probably the one that she's most famous for. And it's strange because that song is like a kind of blueprint, if you like, an advanced story of her life, because people crowded around her when she had lots of money. Even her own family left her when she didn't. And so she had that life of poor to rich to poor again, and a very, very tragic death. And she had no gravestone. There was no gravestones till 1970, when Janis Joplin came along with Juanita Green from the NAACP, and they clubbed together to buy Bessie Smith a gravestone in 1970, all these years after she died.
Do you have any idea why Bessie Smith did not go abroad during her career? Other Black artists didn't, and they had, Josephine Baker, of course, being, the #1 person, had tremendous success going abroad. I'm sure Bessie Smith would have. Did you find any reason why she did not go abroad?
No, I didn't, but I don't think she would have liked to go abroad myself instinctively. I think she had a kind of fear of things that she didn't know, and she liked to be with it. She liked to be able to have things within her control if she could, which is why she bought her own train. She would have found the differences between, Philadelphia and New York and Alabama and what big enough probably. And she always longed for home. She always missed the South. She cooked on her train. She cooked for the whole crew, food stews that took her back home. So I think she might have been afraid of abroad. She might have thought that she'd have faced more racism. She certainly wouldn't have been able to take her train abroad. She was a big celebrity, but she was also kind of wouldn't change her working class roots, and she wouldn't change the way that she spoke. She didn't try and kind of become what she called an uppity Black. She didn't try and kind of become refined or change liking white hot lightning gin and liking pig's feet and so on. And another reason that I admire her is that she stuck to being working class, but she might have just seen a lot of working class people saw travel as being out with their world. So class might have had something to do with it.
Talk a little bit about your encounter with Bessie Smith's music when you were a child, how you encountered it, and what this music meant to you.
I was really lucky because I was adopted and I was brought up in Scotland. So by two white Scottish people that were really wonderful people. But my dad, my adoptive dad, was a great blues and jazz lover. And so he bought me my first ever double album, which was Bessie Smith's Any Woman's Blues. And I was 12. The first time that I heard her voice, I was so arrested by it. It was just so different to anything else I'd ever heard. And then I got really into listening to the actual stories that the blues were telling me. And I found them fascinating. I loved her face on the album cover. I spent ages as a kid staring at that face, looking at the happy side of the face and the more sad side of the face. And I kept, going back and forth and back and forth.
The book itself is interesting. It has kind of fictionalized narrative moments in it. Could you talk a little bit about why you approached the subject in the way you did?
Partly out of necessity, really, because there's so much information that had been destroyed, and unless I was going to be able to find a way to find some of that information and spend kind of 10 or 15 years the way that some biographers do on through writing, trying to find just very small things, then I had to actually try and fill in the missing gaps. And I filled in some of the missing gaps with my imagination. And as I did that, I found that there is such a thing, and I really do believe it, as imaginative truth. And that the closest that I got to Bessie in writing the book were in those actual particular sections that you're referring to. I imagined her death and what it felt like as she was approaching the biscuit truck that we knew that she went into. We knew that her arm was severed. We knew where she was taken to hospital. We knew the name of the road, but we didn't know exactly how that might have felt. And we still don't know how it might have felt. But I imagined it. And in imagining it, I kind of opened her death up. It's the same with, there was lots of things that her rather violent husband, Jack G, destroyed, and he deliberately actually stopped a biography happening at the time, which would have meant that biographer would have had access to her adopted son and to the sisters and to all the rest, and he stopped that from happening.
Spending my money, I didn't care. I carried my friends out for a good time, buying bootleg liquor, champagne and wine. When I began to fall so low, I didn't have a friend and no place to go. So if I ever get my hand on a dollar again, I'm gonna hold on to it till them eagles